Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Mike Barletta back with another video. We got a ton to get into, but before we do, if you guys can make sure to like and subscribe, that'll help me out a lot. I put a lot of work into these videos, and if you guys can make sure to go follow and like my Facebook and my Twitter accounts at Mike B. Weather. I post a lot of stuff on there when I can't update here because I can only update on YouTube every so often. So without further ado, let's get into it. Two areas of interest, really three areas of interest, but we're not going to be really focusing on this one, not a priority. Two main areas of interest: Tropical Depression 14 and newly designated Tropical Storm Laura that we're going to be talking about today. A lot to get into. Currently, Tropical Depression 14 located about 85 west. Tropical Storm Laura located about 61, 62 west, both on the same horizontal plane. Let's get right into Tropical Depression 14. We'll be covering Tropical Storm Laura in this video a little bit later, so if you only want to see about that, make sure to skip ahead. So looking at the forecast cone, this is the official National Hurricane Center forecast for both Tropical Depression 14 and Tropical Storm Laura. Just wanted to get into these pretty quickly just because of the incredibly unique situation that we are presented with here. We have, on one hand, a tropical depression expected to turn tropical storm later tonight or tomorrow, possibly potentially into a hurricane before making landfall along the Yucatan Peninsula, and definitely strengthening into a hurricane before making landfall somewhere on the Texas or Louisiana coast. Now you could see the cone for Tropical Storm Laura kind of treads right along Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, before moving up and in and around New Orleans. So there's the potential for two tropical systems, potentially two hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico at the same time, which since HERDAT started in 1851 tracking hurricanes, we have never ever seen something like this. So this is an incredibly unique situation. An incredibly dangerous situation all along the Gulf Coast. Needs to be watching no matter where you are. Very unique situation. You could actually get a situation where these two hurricanes or tropical systems get so close to each other that they begin to rotate around each other, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But getting into the satellite presentation for Tropical Depression 14, wasn't looking too great earlier this morning, kind of a naked swirl out there. We're finally starting to develop some convection right over the center. That may start to deepen this system. You could see a lot of convection to the east. Wasn't a whole lot going along at the center, but over the past 15-20 minutes to last hour, we've really seen a blow up of some nice negative 60 to negative 80 degree, almost negative 80 degree Celsius clouds right by the center of the storm, indicating that we may finally be getting close to an upgrade to Tropical Storm Marco, which is the next name on the list. This storm is going to move in a northwesterly fashion, maybe making landfall in the Yucatan, if not just missing. The land interaction shouldn't be much of an issue for the strength of this system, however. Now, getting into the current wind shear, you could see the center of circulation right in here with the convection developing right over it, as I just stated before. This is a wind shear map, so green wind shear, that means favorable for development, yellow is questionable, and red is not favorable for development. So taking a look here, currently Tropical Depression 14 is in a very good spot for development shear-wise. There's not a whole lot of dry air out there either. I have the dry air map overlaid onto this, and there simply isn't any. But the lack of wind shear is definitely concerning, especially with such a small system. You may see something spin up very, very rapidly and potentially to hurricane status before even getting to the Yucatan Peninsula, which is right here, because of how small the center of circulation is. So the fact that we're in very, very warm water in the Caribbean, very low wind shear, no dry air, there's nothing really stopping this from starting to really get its act together over the next day or so before it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. Once we do get into the Gulf of Mexico, this storm should be strong enough to carve out a little area of its own lesser wind shear. So I'm not sure if wind shear is going to play too much of a part of weakening the system. It may play a part in capping off the strength of the system, but I'm not sure if we'll see much weakening in the Gulf of Mexico. with those warm ocean temperatures and with that little carve of wind shear, um, with that little pocket of wind shear carved out for the system. Wind shear, basically, the reason that it's bad for a system, I don't know if I've explained this in recent videos, but I will now. It basically tilts the column. So if you're looking at a storm, if you're taking a picture of it vertically, you want the eye, you have a hurricane and then the eye of a hurricane right there. So if you're looking at it the other way, this is what the eye would look like, looking at it if you were to take a picture from the ground. What wind shear does is if you have wind shear coming from the east, it could tilt the column of the eye. So the eye from a picture from the ground would look like that. And that's very not conductive for strengthening. So for a hurricane, you want the whole column to be vertically stacked. So this would be at the surface, this would be 1,000 feet up, this would be 5,000 feet up. Wind shear tilts that column, so this would be 1,000 feet to 2,000 feet, 5,000 feet, to where the column is a little not stacked. It's kind of fallen over itself. So that's not conductive for strengthening. That's basically the role wind shear plays in the tropics. So taking a look at the dynamical model tracks for Tropical Depression 14, I expect this to be Tropical Storm Marco very soon. As I said, taking this right over just to the east of the Yucatan, and then we have a lot of variability in the model tracks. The official model track going right around Houston, Texas. However, we do have some solutions all the way down to southern Texas and into eastern Louisiana. So definitely, with two potential hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico, it really, really complicates the potential track for this system, as if you have another hurricane sitting right here, the storm may want to be attracted to it, pull a little east. It gets very, very complicated. So I take these tracks with a grain of salt as of right now. Definitely something we're going to have to keep an eye on. This is a very unique situation, as I've stated before, but right now, most of the models are thinking this goes somewhere into eastern Texas. However, everywhere from New Orleans to southern Texas definitely needs to be on alert for this system. Now, looking at the current model projections for intensity, most of the models get this right to around near hurricane strength, moderate to strong tropical storm. Some of the models are peaking up here at Category 1, Category 2. Not too many of them. Personally, I do think that this is going to at least develop into a minimal hurricane. I think there's a good shot at that. Just simply because of the lack of wind shear, the very warm waters. I think this is going to make a run at a hurricane. Will it landfall as a hurricane? I don't know. Most of the models do drop it off pretty sharply. But currently, I'm expecting a weak to moderate Category 1. I think that's a pretty safe bet somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico. The exact track has to be ironed out, as I said, but no landfall would be until about 5 days from now. So you're thinking around Wednesday morning would be the potential landfall. So we still have a while to go for this one. So that's enough with Tropical Depression 14. Now we're going to get into Tropical Storm Laura. Not looking too hot as of right now. Despite being in a good environment for development, we have a bunch of different areas of convection trying to blow up. Not a really well-defined low-level spin. We do see some mid-level spin in here. But not looking too great right now, which is good. That's what you want to see. The models did believe that this storm wasn't going to really develop until somewhere north of Puerto Rico, or more so north of the Dominican Republic. So this is kind of what we did expect. However, the storm really is not looking too hot right now. So we're going to be monitoring this satellite picture to see if we could get some more convection blowing up near the center of the storm, or what exactly the story is going to be with that. Once you do see convection starting to spin up again and blow up near the center, that's when you start monitoring for those pressure drops and those wind increases that strengthen the storm. But regardless, mid-level and low-level center right about there. Actually, low-level center is a little further to the northwest. It's a little harder to see that on satellite. So the centers are not stacked, as I said before. The centers kind of look like this. This is the low-level centers over here. Mid-level centers a little further to the east over there. And that's partially due to wind shear. That's partially due to some forward speed issues. The storm is moving very fast, but that should lighten up a bit tomorrow as we get north of Puerto Rico. So we're definitely going to have to monitor later tonight into tomorrow some strengthening of this system, in my opinion. Now, taking a look at the current wind shear map, as I said before, the wind shear that was impacting this system before was this wind shear right here to its north. It was really accelerating the system to the west, and that's kind of why we have a very elongated circulation right now, and then a much bigger circulation throughout the entire system. But once we do get north of Puerto Rico, look at here. There's not much wind shear at all. 5-10 knots. That's really not going to do much to the system in regards to weakening it or keeping a max on its potential strengthening. So once we do get north of Puerto Rico tomorrow, north of the Dominican Republic in a few days, we're really going to have to monitor this for some strengthening. Now, with the exact track, we're thinking this is going to be a little closer to land closer to land than we thought of beforehand. We thought this was going to go a little further north, but we had a new low-level center develop this morning. We thought the low-level center was going to be around here. It actually was developing a little further south, so that shifted the track along with the center further south. So potentially land interaction could be a really big issue for the strengthening of this system, as if it ends up really dipping further south, it's going to interact with some more land, and of course that's not very good for tropical cyclone development because they need to be over water and warm water. But however, if the storm track does shift a little further north to where we think this is going to stay off land, that's where we're going to really have to watch for some more possible development and strengthening, and that's exactly what most of the models have. And that's what most of the models do. They keep it just north of Cuba and the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, and that's where strengthening can really start to take place. The real big strengthening we're most likely going to see is once we get to the western portion of Cuba, just south of Florida in the Florida Strait. That's where we're going to see the majority of strengthening. And excuse me, this was the early morning. I remember why I want to bring this up. This was the early morning track, initialized 0Z, and I have this here to show you the track shift that has occurred today. So this was early morning model runs versus later model runs. So this was the later model runs. Later, these just came out, and you could see some more members shifted further south over land, and shifting the overall track further south, now over from anywhere from eastern Texas to the western Florida panhandle. These are definitely going to wobble around. The tracks are by no means 100% set in stone, and this is a perfect example. Over the course of just a few hours, the storm track has moved significantly further west. As you could see earlier this morning, almost all the storm tracks right into Mississippi or western Florida, very tight spread, and now we have a much bigger spread, and most of the storm tracks over western Florida to eastern Texas. So that's where we're really going to see a little challenge in really forecasting the storm track, because if you remember, Tropical Depression 14, which is currently located here, is supposed to take a track somewhere like this, or a little further to the west, is supposed to take a track somewhere like this. So we're going to have two potential hurricanes very close to each other, and that's going to complicate things a lot. I don't want to get into too much technical analysis from that on what exactly could potentially happen, because there's a million different scenarios of what exactly could go down. And it's unfortunate, but we're really going to have to wait and see and just kind of ride it out and wait for the model trends to see exactly what's going to happen with these systems, especially since they're so close. It's a very difficult forecast. It's a forecasting challenge that none of us have really seen before in this area of the world, especially not me. I'm a 19-year-old college student, been doing weather for 5-6 years, so I have not seen that. And this has never ever happened before in the Gulf of Mexico, so this is a incredibly unique situation. Getting into the potential intensities for Tropical Storm Laura, this was initialized 18Z along with the storm tracks. We have a little bit higher of a ceiling than with Tropical Depression 14. As you could see, most of the members, about maybe a little over half of the members, get this to Category 1 all the way up to potentially Category 4 strength. So we're really going to have to watch that, really monitor the storm track of exactly what's going to happen, whether the storm is going to stay north of the islands, go right through the islands. Really going to have to monitor that because that's going to have a huge potential on not only the track but the intensity of the system. So if you guys have any questions, make sure to leave them down below or direct them to my Twitter or Facebook at Mike B. Weather. Post a lot more frequent updates there, as I said before. Please make sure to like and subscribe. It takes a lot of effort to make these videos. You guys have an awesome day. If you're in the path of these storms or know anyone that is, make sure to stay safe. You guys have a good one, and I'll talk to you later. I'll be back soon with some more content.